So we're live now?
Oh, are we?
We're live now? Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Well, good morning.
Good
And I'm looking-
morning.
Where
Oh,
are
here.
you?
I'll do a cheers for you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, you got coffee there?
I don't drink coffee.
Oh, you're one of those.
Oh, I
You
can't.
It's too much.
I go spazzy.
I know. I'm a little spazzy. I've had a couple cups of coffee this morning. I'm in Brazil. Ruben. It's 2:00 p.m. my time, 4 hours ahead of you.
Whereabouts?
The Northeast. I'm in Bahia. The state of Bahia, in a town called Lençóis. It's a town of less than 6,000. So it's already kind of a quiet town, and then with everything going on right now, you walk around and it just feels super apocalyptic.
Oh, weird, eh?
Yeah, it's super weird. How are you doing? Do you mind introducing yourself for everyone who's tuning in? I'm sure most folks know who you are, but I'd
Should I
love
make
for
my
you to
screen
introduce
bigger?
yourself.
Oh, you can't make it bigger. Okay. Yeah, my name is Rueben George from Tsleil-Waututh Nation. I'm a manager of Sacred Trust, the initiative to stop formerly Kinder Morgan, now Trans Mountain Pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Hey, just one thing. You know the Grand Chief of the Amazonian people, Marcos?
Marcos, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Do you have contact for him?
Oh no, I don't have a contact for him, but I might be able to track it down for you.
No. I could send it to you.
Oh, okay, you have it. Great.
Oh, yeah. We're on a one of these with him not long last week.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even
Oh,
get to say hi to him. It was just like it had so many guests. They had over 40 guests.
yeah.
It was 8 hours long.
8 hours long.
It was a long prayer. It was a prayer,
Oh, it
international.
was a prayer.
Yeah, prayer.
Oh, wow.
I know, crazy. I only stayed for 40 minutes or something. I was the first one to speak, so I was
You bowed out.
yeah,
Well,
I love Brazil. I thought it was the nicest people anywhere I've been in the world.
super nice people. Very, very warm culture. Coming from the north, like it's not that it's cold, in the north. Well, it is cold in the north, but there's a stark difference, in terms of just how warm and welcoming people are here. So,
Oh man, I remember I asked directions in Rio, and some dude went like 3 blocks out of his way just to bring us right to the door. And I was like, what? Who does
yeah,
that?
yeah,
People in Brazil, and it was all the time. They're so
yeah,
accommodating and so nice, and
yeah.
we're we're there for the climate conference.
Right.
2002 or something like that. No, 2012.
Mm-hmm. Well, Ruben, the first question I have for you, kind of right out of the gate, just talking a little bit about COVID-19 and this ongoing global health pandemic. For people like you, leaders, in raising attention around the devastating impacts of big industrial projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline and pipeline expansion project, what does this moment feel like? Does it feel like a told you so kind of moment, or like what were your thoughts when you started to realize what was happening and the rate at which it was happening across the world?
You know what? It's sort of numbing still, and I'm not the one. I wouldn't jump and say I told you so, but we foreseen things like this, and when I was down in Brazil, there's similar prophecies, and Panama, and all over in Mexico, Australia, everywhere I've been, Southeast Asia, there's similar prophecies that talk about some things like this that are coming, but I told you so is one part of it. I can't help but to think is, when Canada and Kinder Morgan submitted their economic analysis of profits, was based on $75 a barrel. And
Mhm.
as you know, before COVID, it went down to $50 a barrel. Then it's minus right now. So, you know, our economic analysis that we did, we explained all these things, that you're basing your profits on outdated, when oil was high, and it's ridiculous. And even Unifor, I think, is in 2013. There's the biggest union in the Alberta tar sands. They pleaded to the oil companies and said, you know what, we want green energy jobs. Let's divest and let's go into something that's sustainable. I think 2015 or 16, Stephen Harper, he did a assessment on the Kinder Morgan pipeline, and he said, and they try to bury it, they try to hide it, because the facts that they came out with were what we're saying is what's going on sort of right now, that oil prices will go down and it will be unsustainable and it wouldn't make economic sense, and green energy is going to start to take over the market. So that's another reason why it wouldn't make sense. And of course,
Mhm.
they ignored all these things and they keep pushing it through. And or even China in the beginning of the year did a deal with Russia to get oil from the Middle East, and they get it way cheaper. When you look at the national prices, even when it was $55 a barrel, Canada sells for $10 less.
Mhm.
So they get, but then they made a 30-year deal to get oil from the Middle East. So where are they going to sell it? So all these things keep coming up, but they still keep trying to build it, and it's just doesn't make sense. And so even without the COVID, um, it was a bad idea, and now definitely it's a really bad idea. You see them taking a big hit because they're laying off people, they're looking to shutting down the tar sands, and
Mhm.
the bailouts are they're talking about are ridiculous. And all around it was a bad idea, and of course COVID made it much worse. But it's what I don't understand is why they're still building.
Mhm. Well, how
We're
would
seeing
you
that.
answer that question? Why do you think they're still building?
Um, one of my elders, he's talking to me. He sent me some information on the previous NAFTA agreement, that Canada was one of the most sued countries in all of the world. So,
Mm.
Kinder Morgan put in 2.5 million into building the pipeline already before they sold
Mhm.
it, and
Mhm.
then they just rush these through. The outdated policies that they run by are somewhere from the 50s are pretty ridiculous. Their environmental standards and their safety
Mhm.
precautions are really super outdated, and so their consultation they didn't even try. So when they make agreement like that, somebody like us comes along and says, hey, you know what, you're not building anything, and then they have to restart, and then in showing that it doesn't make sense, and winning much of the country over. They,
Mhm.
they couldn't just stop it, because they would have been on the hook for the 2.5 million through the
Mhm.
NAFTA agreement. They could recoup some of that money, and instead of, I guess, giving them that 2.5 million, they chose to buy it for 4.5 billion, and now, as we know, it's going to cost over 16 billion. And so it's crazy. It doesn't.
Were you surprised when the Trudeau government bought the project in 2018? Did that come as a surprise to you?
Yeah, it did. And I remember the Kinder Morgan AGM. Richard Kinder just stepped down as CEO, but the new CEO, he stepped in and he's talking to his shareholders and said, we couldn't sell the pipeline for a whole year. We couldn't. And then this is almost the exact words. So we made Trudeau and Canada buy it.
Mhm.
And it was really ridiculous. I think this is going to be the biggest black eye to Trudeau, is the oil, because it's still not going to happen. It's still not going to get built, and
Mhm.
it's ridiculous for them to think that they're going to go that way. So yeah, it baffles me for sure.
Mhm. So for those who maybe haven't been paying as close attention, can you give us a little bit of the most recent legal updates? Because, I mean, the project was rejected due to lack of consultation and other reasons as well. not adequately the impacts on the orca whales, but also consultation with the nations that are going to be affected, including your nation. So they had to go through the consultation process again. What was that second round of so-called consultation? What was that like? Was that any better than the first round of consultation in your mind?
It was worse. But can I start
Worse.
in the beginning?
Absolutely.
So, once we got involved, it was like 10 years ago now. Can you imagine that? 10 years of my life.
Jeez.
But it was just me the first year, and I was just trying to educate. But then Tsleil-Waututh got aboard, and then we spoke to lawyers, and we had to go present to the National Energy Board, even though we knew it was a joke. And here's how bad they were. Stephen Kelly, he wrote in 20% of Kinder Morgan's application on behalf of Kinder Morgan, and then was hired by the National Energy Board. I'm going to turn off my phone. Then was hired by the National Energy Board, and they hired 3 other people like that. Then they created a ministerial committee, and they hired Kim Baird, a former employee of Kinder Morgan, to be on that ministerial committee to try to fix the mess that the National Energy Board created. And at that time, they never disapproved of a pipeline. They always approved these pipelines. So even their process was broken, and then it was biased because they're hiring employees of the people that they're reviewing. So we said, okay, we'll sue you. And then we went to long story short, I get to the Kinder Morgan AGM after, and so we sued them and we won, and that was February 2018. And then they appealed that to Supreme Court. No, they didn't even try to appeal because they knew they would have got denied. So the consultation, what you're saying, is started again, and it was worse. They didn't know what the hell they're doing again, but I can't talk too much about it, but it was to the degree that even when they said the discrepancies in your analysis of when a spill will happen are pretty different, but then the judges more or less said, but looks like Tsleil-Waututh in the nations are right, but we're still going to side with the best interest of Canada. That's what they said. And so it was like handpicked judges by the Trudeau government to put, what I feel personally, push this through, and it was brutal. And so we lost just recently, and so we appealed that loss to Supreme Court. We've been denied. So now we just 2 weeks ago we appealed that denial. So by a long shot, it's not done. If we got Plan B, but we're pretty sure that they're going to accept it. And one thing that they didn't expect is we delayed it 10 years so far. So we're winning. I still feel we have more on board to win than we did 10 years ago. We have a 1,200-page assessment. We have a spill analysis. We have a clean analysis. We have an economic study, and we just finished the air quality study. I haven't seen the data for that yet. It's just finished, and so we have tons on board. And then, as you know, we have tons of allies that are working with us. Dogwood did a pretty good assessment. We have all levels of government representatives that support us, and it's a huge thing, and too much to risk. You break down the tax. 35% tax goes to Alberta, 15% goes to Canada, less than 2% goes to British Columbia, and we're taking all the risk with no benefits. And the trading beads and trinkets go to First Nations. It's taking all the risk with no benefits, and there's so many reasons why we say no and why we're suing them. But anyway, it's we have, like I said, we have more on board to win than we have before, and I'm pretty sure. I'm not pretty sure we're going to win.
Awesome. These assessments that you're talking about, they've been done under Tsleil-Waututh law. Is that right?
Yeah.
And according to Tsleil-Waututh law, can you talk a little bit about that? How your laws have governed these assessments, and then I'll ask another question about your laws as well.
Yeah. Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Tsleil-Waututh means people of the water, and that's people of the water around Vancouver, because our first mother is the water. Your mother feeds you. right?
Mhm.
Takes care of you.
Mhm.
And it's proven in our analysis that assessment that 80% of our traditional diet came from the water.
Mhm.
So that's our law, is our first mother protecting our first mother, and our first mother feeding us, and then we break it down to science, and then now we know, and like we always know, 80% of our traditional diet came from the water, and
Mhm.
then you know almost 30 years ago, some of the elders, and specifically Uncle Len and others, Leonard George, they had the foresight to do some pretty smart things back in the 30 years ago, and that was doing a GIS mapping and analysis, and marking down, even myself when I was a teenager, marking down where I heard a legend, or I went fishing, or I went hunting, and I marked down about 200 places in the Vancouver area. My uncle Bob, when he marked down Robson Street, as you know, he lived here,
Mhm.
is one of the busiest shopping areas of Vancouver, the trendy place, I guess people would say. But that was a hunting trail, and he marked
Mm.
that down. So we included all this in our assessment. Even came to the point that we have legends and stories that we put our enemies' heads on posts, saying, warning people coming into our strait, saying, "Hey, this might happen if you mess with us." And Captain George Vancouver came in the ship, and one of the deckhands documented that, and it's in the archives in Victoria. So even Victoria University. So even our legends and stories were that. So all these were explaining the history of Tsleil-Waututh, and how we lived, and how we protected, and how we were stewards of our lands, and how we continue to do that.
Mhm.
And we these are the things that we used from there. And even back 25 years ago, they started to measure the quality of the water, and these things that were included in that, and it's yeah, that's a couple of quick ways how we explain how we incorporated our law, which supersedes Canada's law, into our assessment of the Kinder Morgan pipeline.
Do you think that Canadians realize that Canadian laws are quite young in comparison to Indigenous legal systems that have been existing and been upheld for generations, but not only are quite young, but also that there are only one system of laws that exist within what folks consider the country of Canada? Do you think Canadians realize that there are Indigenous laws that exist and continue to be upheld and protected?
No. And here's something interesting. When we first started, a couple of the elders are saying, "Well, you got to explain our law," and we're like, "Oh, geez." Essentially, our law too, when we come down to it, is like maybe the law of elements. When I did prayer and ceremony down where you are, I knew
Mhm.
what was going on.
Mm.
Because they do ceremony like we do. They
Yeah.
incorporate the fire, earth, water, and sky. They
Mhm.
do, and I could see them in their process doing that. Like what people know, and something simple is when you have smudge, you get some sage. That's earth. You get fire, and of course, that's one of the four elements: fire, earth, water, and sky. And you light it, and what comes out of it with intention is a
Mhm.
spirit, and that's that smoke. And you take that smoke and you clean yourself. That
Mhm.
that and that's part of our law. Is And what we end up having is a reciprocal relationship of spirit to fire, earth, water, and sky. But it's a reciprocal relationship of spirit when we include ceremony of water, and that's connecting us to our mother. And we do bath ceremonies, we do a whole bunch of ceremonies in our Coast Salish waters,
Mhm.
and so that's our law. So they said explain it, and then you have the fundamentals of any religious or spiritual belief is also our law: love, honor, respect, dignity, pride, compassion, understanding, truth, knowledge, wisdom. All those things are included in that process of creating ceremony, of putting two elements together. That's our law. So how could we explain our connection to spirit to people who don't even understand that they carry spirit within inside of themselves? And that's who we're dealing with. I've been down there to talking to Richard Kinder, and there's nothing there. And some levels of government, I've been with them and I see there's nothing there. It's like, it's a sad thing. I still volunteer downtown East Side.
Mhm.
I still volunteer in the prisons. I still volunteer at a men's treatment center. And when they start, one of my teachers says, as soon as drugs or alcohol come inside of you, your spirit leaves. And so I see that. But it's the
Mhm.
same thing with some of the people that we're dealing with, and I was like, "How the heck am I gonna explain our law to somebody when they don't even understand that they carry a spirit within inside of themselves?" So, they don't
Right.
understand. They
Right.
don't understand why we're doing what we're doing and protecting and loving and more often than not, like to Tsleil-Waututh Nation when we did our referendum of, are we gonna negotiate and receive millions and millions of dollars from them or spend little bit of our resources that we have in fighting them. And when we voted, it was 100% consensus that we're going to protect our mother. If I
Mhm.
got way back in the day, and they'd say, "No, you can't win." Some of my own family, you can't win. It's a $350 billion company. They have Christy Clark in the BC province behind them. You have Alberta behind them. You have Canada behind them. You can't do it. We won't win. And then how to win an argument easily? I'd just say, "Well, we're to Tsleil-Waututh." Oh, okay, we better do it. But
Mm.
it's because they knew, in my time when I was a young kid, when the
Mhm.
tide would go out, and by the way, I did this in Semiahmoo. I went out with my Semiahmoo relations, and I caught
Mm.
10 Dungeness crab, and the gooey ducks are this big, okay, like that big. I swear to God,
Mm.
they're massive
Jeez.
clams. I was like, oh my God, it was
Yum.
such a beautiful, beautiful thing, and I was smiling ear to ear because that's what I grew up on. I grew up, the
Yeah.
tide was out, the table was set. We did a documentary on that. It's called The Tide When the Tide Goes Out. And
Mhm.
and it was true. It was really true. And what we do is we start to protect what we love. We've been cleaning the inlet. First time in 35 years, we did a clam harvest. The first
Mm.
time, and that's what the documentary's about. First time in
Mhm.
35 years because we've been cleaning it. We did elk reintroduction into our traditional territory, and that brought back grizzly bears and wolves. It's completing the ecosystem.
Mhm.
Our salmon count went down to 6,000 for the whole year, but they brought it up to millions and millions. I think
Mhm.
over 5 million they brought it up to annually, and so we're fixing what we have
Mhm.
because our elders said that. Said, "What do you want? We want our kids to experience what we experienced." Holy
Mhm.
smokes! So we said, "Okay, let's do that." So
Mhm.
it's protecting what we love and but bringing understanding too. This is a
Mhm.
beautiful place. Got to
Mhm.
protect it, got to enhance it, got to take care of it because we do a ceremony at the Kinder Morgan port every year where we
Mhm.
lay down traditional medicines because everything that we get out of the water is good. And the only thing that we should be putting back should be good. And what they're putting into the water is dirty, ugly oil that's killing everything. That's
Mhm.
not good. So we they,
Mhm.
they do a prayer to protect the water. And we
Mhm.
do flotilla. We have all of our neighbors and their great, great big beautiful canoes come and we do a ceremony to protect. So I'm rambling,
Mhm.
so stop.
No, you're not. I'm right with you. Um, and I often come to that point as well. How do we have these conversations when we're using terms like best interest and profit, and we're valuing these kinds of projects from specifically an economic realm when, like you said, for so many Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples, there's a whole spiritual realm, there's a whole spiritual sphere, there's these contrasting value systems and ways of seeing and thinking and being, and yet we're forced to be in the same rooms and try and have conversations and sign agreements when we're not even speaking the same languages often. So I guess with that said, my question to you is reconciliation dead? Or did it ever really exist in
Yeah,
Canada?
that's the first thing I said when I stood up to the podium. Reconciliation is dead. Well, it's just like I talked to Haida, and they give them like a land and title agreement, and they're saying it doesn't change much. They say,
Mm,
"Oh, we're giving you something special," but it's not. It wasn't, and even when I talk to some people who even help write the um, Declaration, the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous Rights, they say that, yeah, that's good that they're doing that, but it's a weak starting point.
Mhm.
Look how in depth that we go and look how different we are in just the words that I said.
Mhm.
And it's much more than that too, because before my uncle Len passed away, we were working on this. So we did a 1,200-page assessment. We did an economic study. We did a spill analysis, a clean analysis, air quality study, all these things just on this. We wanted to take that of our Indigenous law and apply to everything. Our education system's failing. Let's fix it. So we're going to do the same thing. The court system, 40%. That's, and we're only 5% Canada's population. We're 40% homeless. Um, Ministry children families, what they're doing is brutal. It's like residential school all over again. Got
Mhm.
uh, thousands of our kids in there. 40% of our kids. So we're going to make a whole governance system based on our law, just like we did with the Kinder Morgan, but to help our people, because we need to, we have to, because it's the suffering. There's a correlation between the abuses that happen in residential schools that of what people went through, that come down to the percentage of the people that are homeless. That's our people. That's me and you and that's our cousins, and that's our relations. We all have family down there that are suffering, but it's a direct reflection of colonization, and those are the things that we have to fix. And the thing is, they're they're not going to help because they're making it worse. So it's up to us to do something about it, to fix them, to show them that this is our law and that we can't have that anymore. The education system is brutal. I went to a National Indian Education Conference in Hawaii, and this Navajo teacher, he came out and he said, I had 80%, I had 100% Navajo students, and 80% were failing. He took his science, grade 8 science, and he changed his curriculum to um to 100% Navajo theme. Within 6 months, 80% were passing. Even in all the different language speakers that incorporate their language into the education system, they came together and they found something amazing, that kids with speech impediments didn't have speech impediments when they spoke their own Indigenous language.
Mm.
And so these are the things that we need to do, to step up, to start to fix, that we need to take responsibility for, because they're not helping and they're making it worse. When I was director of community development, what you would receive on social assistance, some people get $120 a month for food.
Mhm.
On living on reserve, when you live off reserve, you get $300 to $1,200 a month.
Mhm.
Blatant prejudice right there.
Mhm.
It's given First Nation enough to fail, and it's wrong. That's why I got into business. My brother and I, and we want to make money so we can enhance and help and create some of these initiatives. Tsleil-Waututh is the best place I ever worked. Minimal drama. Everyone's loving and caring. My aunties always come hug me, and it's just
Mhm.
beautiful. I want to go where I want, when I want, how I want, and not have money be an issue, and go help people down there where you're at. I've been
Mhm.
there. They kill them. I was
Mhm.
in Panama, and they killed 17 people and injured 100. I'm on a rant, but they killed
No.
them. They injured 150 of them and tortured them and pulled out their eyes with spoons. And, you know, a government model of, I feel and I believe that we could create, is the same law as the people that you're with down there. It's the same
Mhm.
law. And if we could bring
Mhm.
in something and share something with them and make it adaptable to their
Mhm.
legends and stories, which are essentially the same, because it's based on fire, earth, water, and sky, and those fundamentals of humanity and love being the most powerful thing. I'm going to make better decisions. I'm going to work from spirit. I'm going to teach them that, but not only teach them that, but stand within our rights and protect what we love.
Mhm.
Um, that's so, yeah. It's really difficult to understand, and it's different. It's difficult when they're making the decisions, not just around pipelines, but around people and around lives, and around freedom. Even children taken away, their freedoms taken away. So, it, I think, and I don't think, I know we would do better, and things need to change. And I mean better as in us doing our own governing over ourselves, and the government not being a part of what we're doing, because you're right. I believe reconciliation is dead, and it's shameful. Trudeau's alligator tears crying over murdered and missing women. What a crock of BS. It's yesterday was a big day for prayer for the wearing red to honor the murdered missing women. But it's also the men. My father died on Main and Hastings, and so much family. My cousin did 30 years for break and enter, breaking in the house, stealing. He did 30 years. That's wrong. Those are the things that we need to change. It's our laws protect our land, water, and people. Our people. We can't forget our people, and that's why I still do what I do and help. But we need to create change and reconciliation. And it's a word that they throw around, but if they believe in it, let's start to create change and build up the people and give First Nations a fair shot like everyone else. We don't get the same money. It's not social assistance. It's a big discrepancy there. Living on reserve and off reserve, or even the child care system. When a First Nation takes care of a child in foster system, they get less in some circumstances. I don't get it.
Can we talk a little bit more about what you mentioned, how you've traveled to quite a few different territories and visited Indigenous relatives around the world. What are other similarities that you've seen between different communities that practice ancient traditions? You mentioned the law of elements. And what other similarities did you see that just like really struck home for you, where you're like, yeah, it really is connected. These laws of nature, these ancient, ways of being really are connected.
We'd find each other. And Marcos, during the Earth Conference in Brazil, up in the forest, in the jungle, they had this big soccer field. It was maybe a couple times bigger than the soccer field, and we just showed up, and there's like 2,000 people. There's 1,000 Amazonians in full regalia, red and black paint, and it was just so beautiful. And in the ceremony, and it was pretty neat because we just came up and we stood, and we're like maybe 100 yards away from Marcos, and he pointed at us, me and Phil Lane, and he said, "Come over." We're like, "Oh, what? That's..." So we went over, and he goes, "You got your regalia?" And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "Come help me with the ceremony." I said, "No," and they did, and but I think when you come from that place of that they recognize it, and I'd always been invited in those circles, and I was adopted and it was really quick, by a family in Australia. They painted me yellow and white, and I danced out with them in their tribe, and they do ceremonies that are similar. And I think when we do ceremonies that are similar, they recognize it, and they want to do ceremony with us. And as well as we go down and meet, and we honor them too. I don't go to anyone's territory without asking permission to do ceremony. So I bring a gift. I say, "This is my way." And sometimes they say, "Hey, I'm supposed to give you a gift." And I said, "Well, I'm following my way. And I want to give you a gift." But that's the people that I tend to work with are people that are like that. And it's not just around the world, but in Canada. And in the United States, I lived down there for 10 years. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that and when it's like that, and I find those people, what they want to do first is ceremony, then we'll talk business. So, "Oh, hey, wait a minute, we have to do ceremony." And then it's okay, cool. And that's what we should be. When we started 10 years ago, our NGOs wanted to work with us, like Rex Weiler, the founder of Greenpeace, Ben West, and about 10 others. And our teachers, Robert Haney, Phil Lane, said, "You know what? Before we do anything with you, we're going to do ceremonies for 3 months to show you a little bit why we're going to do what we're going to do." And they said, "Okay." And they came to this ceremony for like 3 months, all these environmentalists. And then the same thing happened when we created the International Treaty to Post Tar Sand Developments in Yankton, Sioux, South Dakota. That's when the ranchers teamed up with the tribes, and they said, "No, we got to stop this." And then that rolled into Standing Rock. But it was pretty neat because we named them the new CIA, the new Cowboy and Indian Alliance. It always starts like that, and now it's always beautiful like that too, because that's essentially why they're doing what they're doing, is because of ceremony and our spiritual connection and the reciprocal relationship of spirit to the lands and waters. That's what I love the most. That's what I did. It was, I was there, and they said, you're the second non-Amazonian person we invite to ceremony ever.
Wow.
And I couldn't make it. I had to fly out. I was going to change. I should have changed everything. I should change my flights, but I felt there will be another opportunity. But that's what I love. I love Marcos. I love the people down there when it came right down to it. And I think they get surprised too a little bit, because they'll look at us and, oh, when I was in Panama, we ended up going on this meeting way up in the jungle. I had to catch an airplane and drive for 8 hours, and I was up in the mountains, and there's lush forest and trees everywhere. This guy, I saw him walk by with a machete, and he's going to go get wood. He's gone 2 hours. I was there 2 hours early, and I just noticed him leaving, but I noticed him come back. He didn't even chop down a tree, even though it's forest everywhere. He pulled back a tree that fell down. He wouldn't kill a tree. He found one that died and pulled it all the way back. He wouldn't kill that. Like my grandfather said, Chief Dan George, he said, millions of people want to hear me. And he goes, all I want is the grass to hear me again. But that's what those guys have, though. They have it. I seen it. They have that relationship of spirit. And it's a funny thing, because up here we have protocols in our ceremonies. They don't have any, because they're living it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they're just like, pop up, okay, ceremony, boom. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's how it should be.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. Can you just say that again? Can you explain, maybe flesh that out a little bit? You're saying we have protocols. Like, how would you explain, what are protocols for? How are they formed? What's the importance of protocol? And how does that differ to people who don't, like you said, don't need protocol because they're living their laws?
I think protocol, like in the ceremonies that I run, there's some people literally coming off the street, and we have to explain, this is what we do. This is how we start to introduce ourselves. This is the first step is protocol. You're coming off the street, so you have to be clean. So as drugs and alcohol enter inside of you, your spirit leaves. So how are you going to pray? So we say, when you're ready and you feel clean, a couple of days, then let's start ceremony. That's a protocol. Because because of colonization, there's so much that we forgot, and the disconnection that was. I wouldn't say disconnect. I just say forgot. There's so much that was forgotten, because we could remember it. If we think really hard, we'll remember it, and that's what happens. But we need these protocols in place to help them to remember. And that's what happens. I swear to God, even if they haven't been to ceremony, the ceremony is in their blood, and I start to talk to them, and they go, "Yeah, I get that. How do I know that?" But it's because of colonization that we need to implement protocols to help the ceremony to run smoother. But down there, like, they're living in the jungle. In Panama, I don't know if I didn't stay in Brazil long enough to find this out, but in Panama, they could live in houses like we do, like this house here. But they all choose to have that for when they need it to go into the city to do business. But they all live in the jungle, in a longhouse, in a commune longhouse together. The floor, bamboo floors, and the roofs, the bamboo leaves, and they still fish and make gardens and harvest food. And they choose to live like that. But they have cars. They go to town, and they live in town, and they do their business in town. But they choose to live like that. And when they live like that, they have that spiritual connection to things that they see and they hear and they feel things from things that they're living around that are. And then we have a prayer on it, Natsama, one heart, one mind, one prayer. That's right. Or over in the plains, they say, all my relation. Everything's interconnected. We're all interrelated to everything. Everything has a spirit. fire, earth, water, and sky. You put those two spirits together, it gives birth to a spirit, and that's that smoke when you do smudge. And so they know that, and they understand that to the depth that they for real and are, and you see it when you're living down there. They it's not even about risking their lives. They're just going to do what it takes to protect what they love. So I see that in their ceremonies, and it blew me away that they wouldn't have protocols, and it was beautiful to see. They just say, "Okay, let's pray, sit down, boom." I was like, wow. That's awesome.
Right. Well, I was in Peru actually last year in November, at the end of last year. I spent 2 months in Cusco and around Cusco, and made friends and relations, and was invited to be a part of a coca ceremony, coca leaf ceremony. Got to know that relative quite well in my time there as well. And in working with her and in working with this plant, I stopped drinking coffee, stopped like everything else. I just kind of really focused on building my relationship to her. And I was asked by an elder who comes from like Quechua ancestry and follows Quechua protocol to be a part of this ceremony. And what I was learning from him in sitting down and laying out the leaves and picking up 3 leaves and offering them and, whispering prayer into them and doing that over and over and over again, the way it was explained to me is we do this, we offer these leaves to one another and we whisper our prayers and intentions into them. And we recognize the spirits of the mountains to come to one heart and one mind. And it wasn't used in those exact words. Of course, he was speaking Spanish, but that was the essence of what he was teaching in that ceremony. And that was just one of many experiences that I've had in the so-called global South, where I had similar realizations that, wow, there are so many connections, between Indigenous communities that are very different and contrasted in many ways, but have these similarities because they're not human created laws, right? It's not like, let's just figure out, what works for us. It's more of a, like you said, it's more, in my limited understanding, what seems to be a listening and a remembering and a relational system of governance.
Exactly. And I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. Excuse me. When I moved and I went away for school, it wasn't even far. It was just Vancouver Island. But my uncle's like, it's good that you're doing that because you need to move away to learn. And specifically ceremony, learn ceremony and learn more tools. We're teaching you all the tools you need to know, but you need to learn more. And even the prophecies say that. The Dalai Lama got to pray with some of the Coast Salish people, and they ended up going over there and praying with them too. And when our elder did a ceremony, he all the monks went in the corner and they started talking amongst themselves. Then they came back and said, "Thank you for reintroducing the ceremony back to our people." So the prophecies say that the things that we're missing, we're going to teach one another. We're going to help one another, and not only that, I think when you're away doing it, you're going to learn valuable tools that you'll be able to come back and share with us. And that's what I did, and that's what I feel I do when I travel, when I do ceremony with others. It's just gaining more, and it's a beautiful way. So that's awesome.
Well, and from what I've seen, you and your family and your nation has always been a part of building relationships with other Indigenous peoples as well, because not only are there similarities in in culture and protocol and ceremony, but there's similarities in battles that people face. I've met people who've had their oldest ancestors killed by mining disasters. The Rio Dulce here, the Krenak people, just years ago, they had that ancestor, which was their oldest ancestor in their territory, killed because of a mining spill. It was poison. They'll never be able to pull a fish out of that river again. And, there are people fighting against these industrial projects. And then of course, the human rights, Indigenous rights violations that are accompanied with these projects all over the world. In every Indigenous territory there is across the world, people are fighting globalization, industrial development, capitalist and colonial agendas. So in a lot of ways, there's similarities in that front as well.
Yeah, of course. And there's my grandfather. He scared my mom because they wanted to do the train tracks over to Tsleil-Waututh, or where we are presently. And my grandpa said, you know, I'm going to pick up a gun. This is the only time I'm going to pick up a gun, but I'm going to, any, I have so much conviction. They didn't go through. They went around. But yeah, it's funny because I'm doing a book with a buddy on this Kinder Morgan stuff in Trans Mountain, and my son, we're like, how are we going to do the book when we first started? And my son goes, like Star Wars. Mom, what? And he goes, seriously, Tsleil-Waututh are small rebels against the empire, but you keep winning, you keep surviving, you keep pushing. No one, yeah, geez, I guess so. Which is true because it's a long history. You know, we went down to 13 people. We're almost completely extinct at Tsleil-Waututh, and now we're over 500, and you know, proud people who've been doing the hard fight, you know, just to survive. And now to protect what we love, hand in hand with our own survival, and it's still the same story. Still the same story, but now we're winning.
Rueben, how do you take care of yourself and your spirit? How do you stay strong? I mean, it's not easy to be 10 plus years fighting the same project, the same people. It's not easy to be, you know, spending all that time in the downtown east side that you've spent trying to help relatives who've been impacted by, you know, histories of colonialism and the violence that is just so embedded in these forces. How do you take care of your spirit?
I do ceremony every single day. I do some sort of ceremony, a Coca ceremony, or a Lakota ceremony, or a Cree ceremony. I adopted by the Cree and two Lakota families. They both made me a Sundance chief. You know, I run a weekly sweat lodge, and I do weekly pipe ceremonies. And in the wintertime, you know, this winter I had a little break, but you know, I'm there every single day in the winter ceremonies, and that's I really need it. And now with COVID, it's hard to gather and do ceremony, and I really miss that. But I'm still doing ceremony every day, but I need that connection, camaraderie, in sitting in ceremony with people, and so I really miss that part. But ceremony is the backbone behind the work that we do. Even when we present in the courts, we tell them, say, we're explaining our law. These are our spiritual teachings that we're sharing with you. So if we're going to do that and we're going to talk about that, we have to make this room a holy place. So we need to clean the court and put our medicine down here. And we do that, and everything we do, the closest thing that we have to God in Coast Salish, we did blessings with that, with this work that we're doing. You know, it's not just me, but it's the work that we do. You know, even our allies, they came. Rex Weiler, founder of Greenpeace, he came to Sweat for those 3 months. In the West, they came to ceremony for 3 months. He still comes whenever he's in town. He comes. He goes, "When are you doing ceremony?" But it's important, and it's not mandatory for our allies to do that with us. But it's something that they see that benefits us, and you know, I really have to. I think from that original meeting, I'm the only one left that's working on it full time, and everyone moved on and are doing something else. And of course, the elected leaders get voted in, and new ones come and new ones go, and so it's ceremony.
Well, I want to give you a chance just to share any other thoughts that might be on your heart or mind before we kind of come to a close here. And I'm going to invite Chief Joe Alphonse of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation to share, you know, a little bit about what his nation's been up to in the last little while. But I just wanted to take an opportunity just to really thank you from the bottom of my heart. You've had me close to tears a couple times, you know, and it's not hard for me to be, you know, welled up with water, because I am someone who is very connected, you know, to water and to that that part of that life-giving force that runs through all of us. But it's good to connect with you, and it's good to hear from you. You're a very powerful speaker, and I know I'm probably not the only one that just really appreciates you taking the time to connect, even over these computer screens, still feel connected. It's kind of a strange way for us to meet, but it does the job. So I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you want to share before we come to a close.
Sure. By far I'm not perfect. I come from despite having pretty good teachings in my life from my family. I had a pretty rough life, and it started with my father overdosing on drugs, and my stepdad too, and so much of my family, as you know, like your family, they die in bad circumstances of addiction, of dealing with colonization. And one thing I think of is, and I share this with my kids. They're so passionate. They were 10 and 12 years old when we started this, and now they're traveling the world, and they both spoke at United Nations 3 times each. And one thing I think of is, yesterday with the murdered missing woman red dress day yesterday is, some of those people who died. My cousin was murdered and by Picton, and it was a rough life for her, and she didn't have that opportunity to experience what your experience in ceremony, or what I experienced in ceremony, or my dad. He didn't have the opportunity to experience or to live a life or to have a genuine ceremonial connection to, or my stepdad, the same thing. They ended up dying because of colonization and trying to medicate themselves with drugs and alcohol, and they didn't have their voice. They didn't have an opportunity to really be themselves or experience the gifts of who they are. And by no means am I perfect. I come from a rough spot, and for a long time I lived a rough life through my own addictions. And I was lucky enough that somebody prayed for me, and I ended up coming to ceremony. But that's a big part of why I do what I do, to give a voice to those ones that didn't have a voice. I didn't, at a time in my life, I didn't have a voice, and I didn't have the opportunity or experience to feel that reciprocal relationship with spirits to our lands and waters and people, or live our law of spirit, of harmony, of love being the most powerful thing. I didn't live that way. And I still deal with issues that come about those things. And that's another reason why I do ceremony every single day, because I'm still constantly dealing with this anxiety and the traumas that I lived, and they don't go away, but I deal with them and I become better. And the reason why we do is to give a voice to those ones that didn't. And that's how it's been, and that's how it always will be for me and my family. To Tsleil-Waututh people. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Rueben. I hope to talk to you soon, hey?
Yeah. How long
You're welcome.
How long are you down there for?
You're welcome back here anytime. Well, it's hard to say in these times, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, for me to get back to,
You can't right now.
it's just not really possible right now. So, I'm lucky to have some relatives here who've taken. I mean, my sister's husband is Brazilian. He's Michif, he's mixed like us. He's Indigenous, Afro descendants, and settler descendants, and his family's here. I mean, they're far from me, so I'm not actually with them, but I do feel connected to family here. But for me to actually get back to Canada, I would have to hire bus, like public transportation has stopped. I would have to hire a car, to get to Salvador, which is the closest city. And then from Salvador, you're taking 2 or so planes to get back.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't.
No, and now is not the time. I'd be chasing the virus at that point. So, I'm working, and I have community here, and I'm learning. I'm focusing on just being grateful and continuing to grow relations, like you said, here with Indigenous communities here. And I'm learning a lot about the Candomblé culture and religion, specifically in the region that I am, which is a mix of Afro and Indigenous and Catholicism, but a lot of similarities, like we were discussing before. So I'm here for now. That's all I know. Yeah.
Well, you're doing the things that you'd be doing here anyway.
Yeah.
You're doing the same work that you'd be doing from your home, but you happen to be in a rich cultural place where you could experience a lot more teachings and share them with us when you come back.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks. I'd love to have you back on here, trying to just create this space, just hold up this space so we can just have these good conversations, to start our day. And I've been saying often, this time is obviously a time of profound transformation and metamorphosis. We're learning a lot in this time, internally, externally, in the ways that we're all connected. So it's important, the conversations we're having. It's important, the words that we have in our minds, and the words that we have in our mouths, and the words that we share with each other. So I want to use whatever space that I have to share that with good words, the stories that we need to hear moving forward. Old stories, new stories, but it's important that we hear from people like yourself. So thank you so much again, and you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah. Soon, I hope. Nice. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.